So now we're gonna take a look at one of our best sellers, whole grain. We found another sort of multi-grind out there to try to just show some differences and comparisons. One thing to notice is the shape, right? And I often get asked about loaves and batards and things like that. So I would consider this more elongated, sort of oval, or an oblong, I would say, is more of a batard shape. And I've seen batards even longer than this. Just something that's sort of wide and oblong is sort of what I distinguish as a batard. And I've seen a variety of different things. I've seen short, long, all being called batards. But that's what I would consider a batard versus sort of a standard loaf here. Besides the shape, obviously you can see sort of the color differences, but it looks like they have some of the same grains of one another, but I think the biggest difference we're gonna see is the interior, and I think most notably the flavor. So the way I like to cut this, it depends. So we can cut it like this for, display purposes. I kind of go like this, and then I kind of prop it up like that so, people can see the interior structure. As you can see, they're kind of similar. But the thing is with this is like we have a different crust to crumb ratio here, right? So this is so much smaller interior and exterior versus this. I don't know really what the usage besides sort of table bread would be. It'd be sort of a odd looking sandwich, but that's why we kind of tend to like these shorter, wider loaves. But as you can see, we have a lot more grains on the interior. Whole grain claim, non-GMO claim. As you can see, a significant difference in interior. And also the flavor profile is probably a lot different considering we can have our starter in here. We have a little bit of honey. We have a lot of flavors going on in here where this is somewhat just reliant on the grain flavors. So I also want to point out the difference in scoring because that provides a very different visual. So you see this is more what we call a blind score. So it's kind of where they score straight. It doesn't really give that score a chance to open. It's just sort of giving it a design as opposed to what we do here is where we want that score to open up. Great visual. There's also a lot of people who like that piece right there. And so that's another very big visual difference. And you'll see a lot of our breads, this is our preferred method, as opposed to a blind score, which we do typically on rounds. So I also want to demonstrate another way that I like to cut, especially for tastings. And, for making crostini and things like that, it just makes it a lot easier. Once you have this whole loaf, I actually like to take it right down the middle lengthwise and then put it on its side. It's a much more stable cut, and you can get a lot thinner pieces, especially for tastings, crostinis, half sandwiches, whatever the use might be. And that's why, again, we thought sandwiches were going to be the biggest use here, so that's why we have that sort of wider piece. If I try to do something like that in here, this is a little bit more difficult as a sandwich when you slice it like that. And then if I do the same thing here, you'll get a lot smaller piece, which could be desirable or not. Yeah, it seems a little bit more brittle than ours, a bit more challenging to cut. There's also this bottom, very heavy rice flour dusting, as opposed to something we use as semolina. We like this because it's a little less obtrusive and doesn't affect the eating qualities as much as this would. Careful what you're comparing because not everything is like to like. Look at price point, look at overall visuals. Hopefully I've offered some clues where you can kind of see certain processing attributes for these various breads, but they're not all comparable.